US President Donald Trump insists the Strait of Hormuz is open despite Iran declaring the shipping route is shut until further notice. Both sides have traded their heaviest blows in days as they approach the midway point of their 60-day negotiating period. The US military has launched another round of strikes this morning after striking dozens of targets over the weekend. US Central Command says it is working on degrading Iran's ability to attack ships transiting the strait after another commercial vessel was struck yesterday.
Commercial shipping can't be terrorized in the Strait of Hormuz. And obviously the memorandum of understanding between the parties was always performance-based, and that President Trump, if shipping is attacked or if the Iranians want to act belligerent, then he will respond with overwhelming force.
Iran has retaliated by firing at US allies across the Gulf, including Oman, Bahrain and Qatar. On Saturday, Iran's foreign minister visited Muscat for talks on jointly managing maritime traffic through the strait. But Tehran says the US, through its pressure on Oman, has prevented a result. Now, with just a month left to work out a permanent peace deal, the temporary truce is under serious threat. President Trump has already said the ceasefire was over, but that talks could continue. Iran's top negotiator, Mohammad Ghalibaf, has issued his own warning, saying the era of one-sided deals is over. Now, with more, I'm joined by our Global Affairs Editor, Laura Tingle. Laura, let's go to these fresh strikes on Iran and what's been happening over the weekend. What do we know?
Well, it is escalating at a great rate, Jenna. Sunday, in Middle East time, there were 2 rounds of strikes by the United States on Iran, and just in the last hour, there have been confirmations that there have been strikes by Iran onto those Gulf allies again, who were hit yesterday as well. So it's really escalating. I think it's interesting that the way both sides are framing this. I mean, they're keeping it very firmly on the basis of it being about passage through the Strait of Hormuz rather than being hostility to one side or the other. So it's being framed as being about clearing the path to commercial shipping being able to get through and degrading Iran's capacity to interfere with that. But this isn't going to go anywhere because neither side's really got a clear path to getting resolution just by firepower. And I think a lot of analysts believe that Iran thinks that at some point the US may just run out of munitions or willpower to keep fighting.
So is the Strait of Hormuz open or not?
President Trump says it's open, Iran says it's closed. The reality is that shipping isn't moving through there. When I just checked a short time ago, there'd only been 1 vessel in and 1 vessel out in the last 24 hours. Maritime security authorities have raised the status of the strait to severe, though technically they're saying ships should ignore radio warnings from Iran and coordinate transits with coalition forces if possible. But it's clear that Iran sees this as crucial to maintain control over the whole strait, and it's going to keep hitting commercial vessels, and it becomes a pragmatic matter for ship owners about whether they're prepared to take the risk of moving their vessels through the strait.
Laura, tell us about the response and retaliation that we're seeing but also expecting from Iran.
Well, they're just continuing to mount these strikes. I think the interesting thing, Gemma, just going back to that point about the fact that it's all being seen as being about the Strait of Hormuz, they do seem to be inflicting significant damage on US bases across the Gulf region. And I think the interesting escalation this weekend was really the attacks on Oman. Now, Oman was the state that's generally seen, or Oman and Qatar are both seen as the states that have been trying to assist in finding a peace deal. The Iranians were in Oman over the weekend trying to facilitate that and almost got bombed by their own forces. Now, that's changing the dynamics of the relationships in the Gulf to Iran, and I think it sort of just shows that the Iranians are prepared to go pretty hard on this and not really worry about what it does to their relationships with the Gulf. The question is, what sort of damage are they doing to those US bases? And there's some interesting reports emerging over the weekend that suggest that the US may ultimately withdraw some of its US forces in the region into bases inside Israel as a means of both securing them better and also providing a greater security shield to Israel, which would be a fascinating move.
And so, Laura, where does this leave the temporary truce when there's just a month left to go to figure out a permanent peace deal?
Well, I think it's just a truce in name. I've sort of stopped taking too much notice of that structure because obviously it's just being breached all the time, and we're so close to all-out war that it doesn't matter. And realistically, while there's some of the hawks are talking about the United States attacking and invading Cargill Island, that doesn't look like a realistic prospect. So there are sort of constraints for both sides on escalating it any further, but for all intents and purposes, the conflict is on for young and old.